Hello everyone, my name is Chung. In life, there are small things that may seem insignificant, yet they become turning points that change a person's entire path. There are people who come into our lives for just a brief moment, but leave an impression that lasts a lifetime. I've always believed that kindness is like a seed. We never know when it will bloom, but surely, it will. Today, I want to share a story that I believe will touch many hearts. A simple story, yet full of humanity, about a book, an act of kindness, and a miraculous response from fate. Now, let me tell you the whole story. I invite you all to listen. Back then, I was just an 11th grade girl named Lynn, living in a poor countryside village. My family wasn't well off. My parents were farmers, working tirelessly under the sun and rain, yet we barely had enough to eat or wear. I loved books, especially literature, but the dream of owning a brand new book felt like daydreaming in broad daylight. One rainy afternoon, on my way home from extra classes, I stopped by a small second-hand bookstore by the roadside to take shelter. Inside was a warm, cozy space, with the scent of old paper mixed with the smell of wood, a strangely comforting feeling. I slowly walked over to the bookshelf, and my eyes immediately landed on a worn but clean copy of Hardcore. I picked up the book and gazed at it, my heart fluttering as if I just reunited with an old friend. With a bit of hope, I gently asked the price. The shop owner, an old man with a kind smile, looked at me for a moment and said, "Go ahead and take it. Knowledge is a gift. I won't charge you." I was stunned, touched to the point of speechlessness. In that moment, I didn't just receive a book, I received something far deeper, the unconditional kindness of a stranger. I still remember that afternoon vividly, a gray, rainy day with a biting cold wind that made everything feel heavier than usual. On my way home from extra classes, before I could find shelter, I stumbled upon a small second-hand bookstore tucked into the corner of a street. It wasn't a large shop, but the warm yellow light spilling from inside felt like a gentle embrace in the middle of a cold, rainy day. I stepped in, thinking simply to wait out the rain before heading home. The space inside left me speechless. Wooden shelves, humble and worn, lined with old books meticulously arranged. The scent of old paper, rain, and hot tea wafting from the counter blended together, creating a strangely familiar comfort. I walked slowly along the shelves, my eyes scanning unconsciously, until they stopped on an old book titled Hardcore. I'd heard about this book for a long time but never had the chance to read it. I flipped through a few pages, the faded print whispering softly to me. My heart beat faster, and in my mind, I kept wondering, how much does it cost? I only have a few coins left in my pocket. I brought the book to the counter and hesitantly asked, "Excuse me, sir, how much is this book?" The shop owner was an elderly man, probably in his 60s, with white hair and kind eyes behind round glasses. He looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. "You really love reading, don't you?" I nodded slightly and mumbled, "Yes, but I probably don't have enough to buy it. I just wanted to ask the price." He didn't answer right away. Slowly, he took the book, gently brushing the edge of the cover as if recalling a memory, then placed it back into my hands and said, "This book has been waiting a long time for the right person to read it. Take it home. No need to pay. Knowledge is a gift, not a commodity." I stared at him, wide-eyed, not believing what I just heard. My throat tightened. I tried to say something. "Thank you so much, sir. I'll take good care of it." He simply nodded and returned to his desk, as if nothing special had just happened. But to me, that gesture meant the world. As I left the shop, clutching the old book tightly to my chest, I felt warmer than I had in a long time, not just because of the precious book, but because of an act of quiet, profound kindness. I never knew his name, nor whether I'd ever see him again, but from that moment on, I silently made a promise to myself. One day, I'll live a good life so that I can give to others the way he gave to me. Time passed like the wind. Since the day I held hardcore in my hands, so much has changed, not just in the way I thought, but in what I longed for. That book became my closest companion, a small light guiding me through late-night study sessions in my dimly lit room back in the countryside. There were passages I read over and over again until the pages wore thin, because each story planted a seed of belief in me, that as long as we live kindly, life will, sooner or later, be kind in return. I studied day and night, carrying with me the dream of one day leaving my small village, passing the university entrance exam, and becoming a writer, someone who could tell stories that touch others, the way one book had once touched me. And then, a miracle happened. I was accepted into the literature department of a prestigious university in the city. The first few years were tough. I had to work part-time jobs, tutor, write articles, and freelance content. There were times I felt so exhausted I wanted to give up. But every time I opened that old book, the one I still carried in my suitcase, it gave me strength. I never forgot the man who gave it to me, the kind-eyed old man in that tiny bookstore so many years ago. Life gradually became more stable. I wrote more. My books were published, and to my surprise, they were warmly received. I began to get invited to speak on stages, sharing my journey, my passion, and how it all began with a nameless old book. Once, I told the story of the man in the bookstore to a room full of college students. It wasn't just a small detail, it was the beginning of a journey rooted in kindness. And there's something I've never said aloud. I've always wished that one day I could find him again. Not to repay him, but to say a heartfelt thank you. Sometimes I wonder if he's still alive, what's become of that old bookshop, and whether he remembers the poor girl who walked out into the rain that afternoon with a book clutched to her chest. Whatever the case may be, one thing I know for certain, that quiet act of kindness changed the course of my entire life. Life truly has its mysterious circles. Some things we thought belonged only to the past suddenly return at the right moment, in front of the right person, like a gentle reminder from fate. That day, I was on a work trip back to the countryside, not far from the village where I grew up. That morning, I had been invited to speak with a group of children in a mountain school about the value of books and the power of gratitude. The talk ended with applause and the shining, hopeful eyes of those young students. On my way back, I happened to pass by an old street I hadn't seen in years, and my heart stopped for a moment. There, on the corner of the street, tucked between two worn-down buildings, was the same bookstore. The sign had faded, the books outside were fewer, but the warm, familiar feeling remained exactly the same. I stepped inside, breath caught in my throat. The space hadn't changed much, only the old man had. His hair was whiter, his back more hunched, and his eyes cloudier behind thick glasses. But I recognized him instantly, the man who once gave me a book and unknowingly planted a seed of hope in my heart. I walked slowly to the counter and softly asked, "Sir, do you remember me? Years ago, a little girl came into this shop and asked about a book called Heart, and you gave it to her as a gift." He looked at me for a long moment. Then suddenly, a slow, warm smile appeared. "You're that girl? So, you really became a writer, didn't you?" I couldn't hold back my tears. After all these years, I had thought I'd never have the chance to say thank you. And yet here I was, standing once again in this dusty, time-worn little shop, facing the man who had changed my life in ways he probably never imagined. I reached out and held his frail hands, my voice trembling. "Sir, I've waited so long to say this. Thank you. That gift you gave me all those years ago helped shape the person I am today." He didn't say much. He just nodded, eyes glistening. And I knew no more words were needed. Our hearts understood each other. That encounter felt like the perfect ending to a journey that had spanned more than 10 years. After all the hardships and trials, the sleepless nights spent writing, and the years of struggling to make a life in the city, I was finally able to return and bow my head in gratitude to the person who had quietly lit the very first light on my path. I spent the entire afternoon talking with him. He was still as simple as ever, still refusing to see what he did as anything special. He told me, back then, he simply thought I looked like his granddaughter. He saw that spark in my eyes, that hunger for knowledge. And since no one around him seemed to care much about books anymore, he gave it to me. A small act of natural kindness, with no expectation, no calculation. But maybe that's why it went so far, and lasted so long. Before I left, I reached into my bag and took out a small book, my debut work. On the cover, I had quietly written a single line just for him. "To the one who planted a seed of hope in a poor little girl, thank you." I handed him the book. His hands trembled as he held it, and his eyes welled up, though he tried to hide it. We didn't say anything more. Because sometimes, the deepest gratitude is best expressed in quiet, heartfelt silence. That evening, on the bus ride back to the city, I sat in silence, watching the cars pass by through the window. There was a strange and gentle peace inside me. I realized something. Sometimes the things we do unconsciously, a small gift, a kind word, a gesture of care, can become a bridge between two strangers, and change the course of someone's life in unimaginable ways. From that simple story, I believe more than ever. Kindness is never wasted. It may not be returned right away, but it is always remembered. And one day, in some form, it will come back softly and profoundly. That old book changed me. And now, what I write, what I live, what I share, all of it is part of that same circle of kindness. So if you're holding something good in your hands, a word of encouragement, a book, a bit of time, a willing ear, don't hesitate to give it away. Because you never know what miracle it might spark in someone else's life. After everything I've been through, after years of relentless effort and that emotional moment of reuniting with the man who once helped me as a child, I've come to truly understand, life is full of miracles. But those miracles don't come from magic or luck. They come from the human heart. My story, which began on a rainy afternoon, in a tiny old bookstore, with one small act of kindness, taught me a profound lesson. Sometimes, just a little bit of compassion can change the course of someone's entire life. The old bookseller didn't know who I was. He didn't imagine that the book he gave away would become the first spark of hope in a difficult journey of learning and growing. But that selfless act became the foundation of my belief in goodness, in humanity, in kindness, and in the power of living a meaningful life. From the moment I held hardcore in my hands, I began to live differently. I learned to be grateful for the smallest things. I learned to listen, to share. I realized that not everyone starts with the same opportunities, but all it takes is one person, offering a hand, whether through a book, a few kind words, or simply by showing up at the right moment to help someone rise and keep going. That's why I constantly remind myself. Live in a way that lets you become someone else's bookstore elder. You don't need to do something grand. You just need to live sincerely and offer small acts of kindness, and one day, in a way you least expect, something beautiful will come back to you. I've had the chance to tell this story many times during talks, in my books, and in everyday conversations. Not to seek praise or attention, but to remind others and myself that kindness never goes out of style. It is the thread that connects even the most distant hearts, the most precious compass we carry through life so that we never lose ourselves. So if you're reading this and wondering, can I do something meaningful for someone's life? Please, don't hesitate. Do it today. Because you might just be planting a seed that, someday, will bloom in a place you never imagined. And that is the story I wanted to share with you today. Each of our lives may begin in very different circumstances. Some are born into comfort, while others have to climb their way up through hardship. But no matter who we are, no matter where we come from or what we do, each of us has the power to become a sower of seeds, simply through a kind act, a warm word, or offering the right opportunity at the right time. I consider myself lucky. Years ago, a stranger gave me a book. And today, I tell this story not only as a way of honoring that gift, but as a reminder that even the smallest act, when done with genuine heart, can change an entire life. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. I hope that as you leave this room or finish reading these words, you'll carry with you something warm, something hopeful. And maybe, just maybe, be ready to share that kindness with the world.